Welcome back, my Jedi friends, and in today's episode, we are going to expose fake spiritual teachers. And I'm going to give a right up front caveat. This is purely my opinion, and you are welcome to debate, get in the comments, jump in, give your tuppence worth. Because the reason I'm recording this video is because in the comments, I've seen a few comments from you now talking about your spiritual teacher telling you this, or your spiritual teacher telling you that. So let's start right off the bat. What do I consider a spiritual teacher? Well, let's look at what religion is supposed to be. Let's look at what a priest is meant to do. What are they meant to do? They're meant to listen, ask questions, and forgive. Listen, ask questions, and forgive. And maybe guide you through those questions to a better path. That's it. Their job is not, now this is it, there is not to judge. So when I hear all of this stuff about spirituality, that God wants this for you, God hates sin, God hates you when you do this, I don't buy it at all, folks. So before I get into a quagmire about God or religion, let's talk about this. When I say God, when I say religion, it means any religion, and it means any religious entity. And it means anyone who's supposedly a spiritual teacher. In my world, that we talk about the two pillars of problems in your life, and that comes from guilt and judgment. And that's largely guilt against yourself and judgment against yourself. And ultimately, that's the only voice that matters. Your relationship with yourself is the one that matters. Now, if you're a narcissist, then there's going to be subject to the following. So I use the following. Is what you're doing good for yourself, others, and the planet? And if the answer to any of those is no, then I'm going to suggest that the relationship with yourself is flawed if you're facilitating that. That's what I'm going to suggest, folks. I'm going to suggest it. So, does it work for you, others, and the planet? Does it harm you, others, or the planet? And if it doesn't harm you, others, or the planet, then my suggestion is then it's generally good. So I hear all sorts of um, things about prostitutes. Is it spiritual to go with prostitutes? Is it spiritual to judge people? Is it spiritual to steal? Is it spiritual to shoot people? Well, only you can judge it, folks, because every single incident of everything is context dependent. We don't know the backstory. I'm going to argue that there's a set of life circumstances that will get you to do, that could get you to do even the darkest things. Let's take it like this. Would you shoot somebody? Well, you're probably looking at this video and saying there's no way I would shoot anyone. But what if your life of someone you love was dependent on you shooting the person that was about to shoot them? Would you do it then, folks? Would you do it? Then we're drawn into a darker place. And this is the video that I shot on Joe Hari's window. There's a certain set of circumstances that you've never been exposed to that means you don't know how you would react. You can speculate how you would react in those situations, but would you actually do that? And the odds are you're going to surprise yourself when you're put in stressful situations. So this whole thing about our religious education teacher, and seems to be a fairly mainstream, that if you masturbate, you'll go blind. We used to walk into the classroom and walk into the desks, walk into him. This whole thing that God doesn't want us to masturbate. Well, I struggle to believe any of that nonsense. That you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Now, if no one's getting harmed in any transaction and it's not bad for the planet, then I'm going to say, then why not? Why not do it? Why not do it? It is in our enlightened best interests to get what we need. Now, if what we need it misaligns with being good for ourselves, others, or the planet, then there's a question mark. But it's not for me to judge it, folks. It's not for me to judge it. Now, if somebody, for example, was in the playground shooting kids and I had the opportunity to take them out, would I do it? Well, if I could, I probably would, folks. And I would argue that you probably would as well, given the choice. So would you kill people, which is just about the most sinister thing that you can do? Well, there is a time and a place where it may be appropriate to kill people, folks. So the bottom line, the reason that I throw this out there is that we're in no fit state to judge anyone else for their actions. Judgment and guilt are the two pillars that all problems are built on. So when I hear spiritual people talking about what we should or shouldn't do, if it's not harmful to ourselves, to others, or the planet, then I think that it's flawed. I think those teachings are flawed. So my granny grew up in Belfast and she lived until she was 90, and she was the loveliest woman. She loved everybody. She was just the loveliest woman. So the Jehovah's Witnesses used to knock on the door and she would invite them in. And of course, she was very well read, my granny, and she used to tie them in knots with their own bullshit. They couldn't wait to get out the house. And I watched my granny do this a few times. And it happened to me. And in fairness, I had some very interesting conversations with Jehovah's Witnesses. One of them came in once and told me that God hates sin. And I said, well, if God hates sin, and for a start, I struggle to believe that God hates anything. If God hated something, why would he create it? Why would he create something with a nature to do something so sinister that he would hate it? Why would he do that? Why would God do that? Now, I'm not saying I believe in God, but I am saying that I had a very interesting conversation with the Jehovah's Witnesses who were telling me that God hates sin. And I said, but I thought God is love and God loved all of us. And they told me that God loves the sinner but hates the sin. I said, well, that's a very strange paradox, isn't it? It's a very strange paradox that God would love the sinner but hates the sin. That seems to be a oxymoron. An oxymoron, folks. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And if God is if God can create anything, why would he not uncreate sin? And why would he create the devil? Why even bother with the devil if he just expected us all to turn up here and be love? So anyway, I had several hours of debate with the Jehovah's Witnesses over this area, over who is anyone to judge me for my actions except myself. Except myself, folks. Now, if everybody took that belief, there are narcissists out there and they could go around doing egregious things, harming other people and justifying it to themselves. So obviously there has to be some sort of laws of the land to make sure that people don't just wantonly go off and ruin people's lives because it feels good to them. So there's a middle ground here, folks. But when it comes to things, the direct question is going with prostitutes, is that spiritual? Or is that a lack of spirituality? Well, there was a long argument that I had with a group of my friends as to whether it's spiritual to be in any sort of relationship, because everything's transactional. And you ask anyone that's gone through a divorce, and there's more of them than there's not on the planet, folks. There's more people who have gone through a divorce than have had a happy, successful marriage, which tells you that all relationships are transactional. And it could be argued that all sex is transactional. There's an argument there, folks. I'm not saying you're going to agree with it. I'm not going to say that you're going to like it, but there's another side of the coin. So people that would go with prostitutes, for example, well, that's transactional. Everybody knows what they're getting into. Everybody's in complete agreement with the situation. I'm not here judging it, saying it's right or wrong, but I'm certainly not here saying it's wrong. Who is to say that it's wrong? And who's to say that that's any less harmful than going into a relationship that ends in divorce? And most relationships do end in divorce, folks, because people grow at different levels. The expectations aren't there. We're not right within ourselves. There's 100 different reasons why relationships don't work out, folks. So let the person who has never sinned cast the first stone. That's a good place to start, folks. That's a really good place to start. If you are sinless, if you've never done anything that would come under the moral question, then maybe, just maybe, you have a right to judge. But if you believe that, the odds are that probably there's a blind spot in your awareness and what you believe. So the bottom line is, folks, when I hear things like spiritual teachers tell me I should or shouldn't do this, I think to myself, what a load of bollocks. What a load of bollocks. Because we're not here to judge. We are here to observe. We're here to adjust. We are here to react. If somebody does something sinister, it's our job to do something about it within our own framework. And we're right back onto the playground of the person shooting kids. Would you take them out if you could? If you could stop them killing anymore, would you take them out? And I would say that most people, most empaths would, if they're honest with themselves, say yes. So we are capable of the most dark, sinister things that you can imagine, folks. And a lot of my videos, as we talk about, is understanding that there is a darkness within all of us. We have to make peace with our dark side before we can embrace the light. And there it goes. No one is completely spiritual. Maybe there are spiritual people out here, but in my opinion, they will not go around telling you that. They will not go around claiming they're spiritual, and they certainly won't be judging you for doing stuff. So there you go, folks. That's my tuppence worth. I've opened up the doorway for this. By all means, jump in on the comments, give me your own opinions on the subject. But yes, this has come through your comments. This has stirred some very interesting debates. And I'm going to finish off by saying that I believe that anyone that thinks that they're spiritual and then goes to and tells people how they should live their life and tries to make them feel guilty for stuff where there's no apparent harm to themselves or others or the planet, I would call them false spirituality. That's false spirituality, folks, in my opinion. So there's a little bit of controversy for you today, folks. By all means, get stuck into the comments. I'll be happy to hear what you've got to say. If you're finding me for the first time and you want more of these random conversations where we might get stuck into some topical life issues, then by all means, subscribe to the channel. Show this video a bit of love. Help the algorithm. Help me with the algorithm. And if you want more of my random musings, you can get one of them there.